the financial pressure associated with that type of debt load is not worth your mental happiness. So many people think, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do. If I'm doing something that I really love, it quickly will become something you don't love when you can't pay your bills. Everybody's going to have different goals. For someone, it might be building relationships and having a client come back and see them and you knowing everything about that client and the family and now seeing the other family members of the client and like growing that family tree within your clinic. Like that was really powerful for us. But what did that mean? That means that then we had to give up lunch sometimes, right? Because somebody needed something urgent. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first ever solo episode of the Veterinary Roundtable, the podcast where we answer your veterinary-related questions while having some fun along the way. If you enjoyed today's episode or a previous episode, be sure to leave us a review on your podcast provider of choice. And if you have any feedback to offer to improve the Veterinary Roundtable, let us know. Yes, this is a solo episode, as we all are done a bit of gallivanting around with summer, and so we thought it'd be fun to do some individual mailbag episodes, and so here we are. All right. Don't forget social channels, Instagram, TikTok at the Veterinary Roundtable. Don't forget about the YouTube channel where all the video podcasts will be published going forward at the Veterinary Roundtable. It's a great place to watch the ladies in red. Make sure you message us. We love getting messages. We love responding to people. So hit us up on social media. All right. Before we get started, I need to also promote that we have a text message feature for our podcast. All you have to do is tap on the episode in your podcast provider, look at the top where it says send us an inquiry through a text message here and text us. And then additionally, and every time I say that word inquiry, I think of Devin, right, guys? Because on the previous episodes, Devin would and I would always laugh about how you're supposed to say that word. Is it inquiry? Anyway, made me think of Devin. I need to give you guys a quick update on Devin. She passed her VT&E. Just found out like on Friday. So congrats to Devin. That's freaking amazing. Way to go, sister. I knew you could do it. Okay, moving on. We are also now, which is really cool because I also want to do an episode where we listen to voice memos. So we will have the ability right now, we can take voice memo inquiries as well. So email us your voice memo to the veterinaryroundtable@gmail.com. All right. So as I mentioned in the post, this is one of my favorite episodes. I love mailbag episodes because it's like you're having a conversation with people. And I love just the constant questions like that people will send in. And it's kind of like you're just talking off the top of your head. So anyway, let's get started with some really good questions. Thank you guys for sending them in. They're fantastic. We have a lot to cover. And so bear with me. And if you have any additional questions to these questions, once I give you some information, then make sure you hit us up. Okay. This is a great one. What to wear to a job shadow? I have one next week and I don't have scrubs or a nice blouse at Living It Up 11. All right. This is a great question because one, I think that it shows that you care what you're going to look like when you are going in for your job shadow. And that's really important because first impressions are made very quickly. And when you don't make a good first impression, then it takes so much more work to get back on top again. So it's good that you're paying attention to this. I would even say that it would be appropriate to call the person that you're going to do the job shadow with. And I would even say exactly what you said to me, which is, hey, I'm coming in for a job shadow next week. I want to make sure that I'm professional and dressed appropriately. When you ask that question, they already know that that's important to you. And that means that then they can count on you to show up professionally every day. So I think that that's really important. And that also goes for job interviews. But I don't think they're going to expect you to wear like a nice blouse or a nice short shirt. They know that it's crazy in the clinic and they just want to make sure that you probably don't have open-toed shoes on. They want to make sure you don't have holes in your jeans. You don't want to show up with anything offensive on a shirt. Obvious things, but sometimes things that people don't think about. So if I were you, I would call and say, I'm having a job shadow next week. I would like to make sure that I look professional. What would you prefer that I wear? And then they'll tell you. And that way, then you don't have to worry about disappointing anybody. If you're too nervous to call them, then I would probably just wear closed-toed shoes. I would wear maybe some khakis and a nice, just short sleeve polo shirt, that has, buttons, collar. That's all you got. That's all you need to wear. Super easy. If you don't have that, then I would wear a clean cut, basically no logo t-shirt with your khakis, or chinos. So hopefully that helps. All right, next question. What's your advice on leading up and down the chain of command and work towards practice ownership while also having multiple children? At Nicole Schroeder 21. Nicole, this could take me an entire episode to discuss this entire concept. I'm very passionate about leading up and down the chain of command. It's something that I think people in general really stink at leading up. I think people naturally, leaders can lead down. I think it's easier for people to lead down, but leading up is so much harder. And I think that you've added in some variables like, okay, you want to work towards practice ownership, which is actually going to be to your advantage when you're leading up. You also having multiple children. So when I hear someone talk about their job and multiple children, I think that their immediate thinking is work-life balance. And I have a different opinion about work-life balance. You're never going to feel like you can live in the middle, right? You are always going to feel like you have to live on the extremes in order to accomplish something extraordinary. So, and I mention that because you're talking about practice ownership. So if you want to own a practice, there are going to be times where you have to live on the extremes. So the easiest way to think about it, I think, is to think of this in two buckets. You have work in one bucket, and then you have your personal life in another bucket. In your work life, you're going to have to be able to swing to the extremes in order to get things done, in order for big things to happen, like owning a practice and making it successful, working towards owning a practice and making it successful. In your personal life, you can never drop a ball, right? You have children, you have a family to maintain, a house to maintain. And so it requires tighter balancing act than your work life. So your work life, you can swing all the way to the extremes and then come back to the middle. The key is to not be out in the extremes for too long, so long that you never make your way back to the middle. In your personal life, it's a much tighter balancing act so that nothing gets left behind, because you don't want to leave anything behind. The problem is that people suffer from feeling like, jack of all trades, master of none. And that's because they're trying to live this really narrow life of this balancing act going back and forth. And instead of being willing to swing out to the extreme and accomplish something, they're thinking that they can never get out there, because if they do, they're out of balance. That's not what's happening. For sure, when you swing out to the extremes, you're going to leave something behind. That's just what happens. But in your work life, that's okay. You need to do that in order to grow and accomplish extraordinary things. So to get to the root of your question, how are you going to do that? Leading up and down the chain of command. Leading down, again, probably not an issue for you. My guess is that you've established trust with those that are below you and that you're leading below you. In order to establish trust with those that you lead, that you're trying to lead up to, I wrote down like 4 things that you really need to pay attention to. Here they are. You need to keep your superiors informed at all times, and that builds trust. And they believe that then you know what's going on, and they can trust that your evaluation of what's going on. So they not only need to know what you're currently doing, they need to know what you have done and then what you plan to do in the future. So that's the first thing. Second thing, regardless of how you feel about the person, you have to respect the position of the person that's in front of you, your superior, the person leading you. Without that, you're going to see trust be affected. You're going to see delegation be affected. And so you definitely have to respect the position, even though you may not like the person. You need to avoid petty arguments with your superior, because even though you may be right, you're going to sacrifice your ego and in the end. And so you want to avoid those things because those petty arguments get in the way of accomplishing big things. And lastly, I would say that you want to make sure that you don't participate in small doses of defiance, meaning that talking one way down to the people below you about your superior, which would probably fall into the category of respecting your superior, and then turning around and to your superior being a different kind of person. You will not be able to convince your superiors to move into action if that is what you're doing. If you're participating in small acts of defiance, it will keep you from growing. Absolutely keep you from growing, because what you're doing is making your boss's job harder, which then ultimately will make your job harder because you're going to have a shorter leash. And so really what you want to do is buy into the policies and the procedures that are in the clinic, understand why they are what they are and why they've chosen to use the procedures and policies that they have in place, and then slowly start to offer input with solutions so that you can evolve the practice into whatever direction that you think would be beneficial for the practice moving forward. You have to remember that the clinic owner also wants to be successful. And I think having those conversations and having that trust built up over time allows you to move that boss in a particular direction. And the last thing I would say is that if you feel like you're in a place where you have not been able to establish an enduring relationship, because I think that enduring relationship is going to be really important for the open flow of information and for communication and the display of respect on both sides. If you cannot establish that enduring relationship, then you need to move on. That is not a place that you are going to be able to make a substantial difference, and your skills need to be used elsewhere. And so that's what I would say about leading up and down the chain of command. Again, I could give an entire podcast on that one concept because I think it's so fascinating and it's so difficult for everyone to lead from the middle. So anyway, with multiple children, I think I kind of addressed that as far as like your work-life balance. It is just really difficult because extreme results require extreme focus, and time on one thing is going to mean you're not spending time on another. And in an effort to attend to all things, people are going to make the mistake that basically that everything gets shorted. And that's really hard sometimes, that feeling to feel that you're not being the best mom that you could be or the best veterinarian that you can be. And I think if you understand the concepts of counterbalance, it will make sense. And I think you'll be able to feel like you're moving in a more positive direction and with intent, versus feeling like you're treading water. So I would do as much learning as you can about that concept because I think it will make a huge difference. All right, next question. Can I clean my dog's ear with almond oil? At Vanessa Mix, MXIX. Okay, great question. You're not going to hurt your dog cleaning its ears with almond oil, although I don't think it's going to be as beneficial as what you think it is. We get this question a lot with coconut oil as well, for skin stuff. And actually, there was just a recent article out from I think it's the European Histopathology Journal, where they actually studied a product called camellia oil, which is tea seed oil. They actually did show that it reduced inflammation and helped repair the skin surface barrier. So if I was going to use something, I would use camellia oil rather than almond oil. So hopefully that's helpful. Next question. Realistically, how are people going to afford vet school? Will vet schools help with this at all? At Claire Gromlich. Oh, Claire, this is like an ongoing problem, isn't it? I mean, and it's potentially just going to keep getting worse and worse. I think, are vet schools going to help with the problem? No. And here's the thing, the really important lesson to learn is that you are the only one who can solve this problem. You cannot rely on the government. You cannot rely on the school to solve this problem for you. Can you make it happen with the price of education as it is now? Yes, you can, but it requires extreme discipline. And so we did several posts on school debt. Go back and check those out because it kind of outlines how that looks and what would be required in order for someone to be successful financially, having the debt load that most veterinarians have when they graduate from school. So check those out because I think they'd be very helpful. But vet schools are not going to help with this. I think they're going to try and do token things like, here's a scholarship. You guys can all apply to these $10,000 scholarship. There's going to be stuff like that. The AVMA is going to try to do things. They're going to continue to try to do some programs with loan forgiveness, where if you do these things for this many years, then you get reduction on your they're going to continue to do all of those types of things. But I don't think at the end of the day, anything's going to make a huge dent. And it's going to require discipline on the veterinarian's part in order to not be saddled with exceptional financial distress later in their lives. So I wish I wasn't a Debbie Downer on that topic, but I kind of am. Okay. But doesn't mean you can't do it. You just have to be very disciplined. What are some do's and don'ts for new graduates to be successful at Veterinary Vibes? Okay, Garth, I see you. What are some do's and don'ts? Okay, some do's for new grads. To be successful, you got to show up on time. I know that sounds really stupid, and everybody thinks that's really obvious. You'd be surprised how many people, not just hourly staff, how many veterinarians will not show up on time and be prepared to do their job. They come in, they're unprofessional looking, they come in tired, they come in disheveled, they come in 5 minutes before an appointment's ready to be there, they come in 30 minutes after their surgery patients have arrived and are expecting to start surgery right on the dot. Being professional means being timely. And so the biggest thing you can do is beat everybody to the office. And, I'm not talking by hours by any means, but being the first in the office will go a long way to showing that you're committed to excellence. And so I think being timely and being not late is a huge thing. And that's all under our control. Super easy. Doesn't even require any skills. So it's definitely something you can do. So that is something to do, is be on time. Another thing, be a sponge. When you get out into practice, it is not going to be like academia. We make a lot of crap up sometimes when we're out in practice because we don't have any other choices. Is it all founded on science? Absolutely, because we're making our best guesses based on what we've learned in academia. But some of it will seem kind of weird. You know what? Be a sponge. All right. Also, offer input. Just because you're young doesn't mean you don't have a valuable opinion. You absolutely have a valuable opinion. Make sure that you offer an opinion. Let's see here. Some don'ts. I guess my do's and don'ts kind of go together, right? Don't be late. Don't be a know-it-all. Don't say, oh, at my last clinic, we did this over and over again. Don't stir the pot from a culture perspective. Don't go in there and try and befriend and become friends with those that you're leading. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive. Of course, be friendly, but you should not be friends from a equal playing field, status wise within the clinic structure, because it creates confusion for those that you're leading. And so if you are socializing or fraternizing with people that you're leading, it becomes very hard and the lines get blurred. And when you have to deliver news that maybe is difficult for some people to hear, or maybe that people don't disagree, or people disagree with your decision making, it becomes very difficult. All right. And that's where I feel like a lot of the family crazy comes into veterinary practices. We don't treat it like a professional organization. And so our clinics. And so clinics need to be treated like a professional organization. You would not go out and party with people that you're leading. It's just not something. Would you go out and have dinner? Absolutely. there's a difference. Make sure you're understanding the difference that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being unfriendly. I'm talking about the difference between leading those below you and fraternizing with those below you. And people on the same level, so your doctors, your fellow doctors, absolutely. Hang out with them. I think it's great to form a rapport with them. And if you want to know about people and you want to help people, the best way is to know something about them and to care about them. We have a saying written on the wall that's a John Maxwell saying, people don't know how much you care. People don't care. I'm sorry. Let me say that again. People don't know. Oh my gosh, I can't talk today. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So spending time with people is really important. Getting to know people is very important because you're more likely to be able to lead them effectively. And that goes for you, even though you're going to be the new kid on the block. All right, so those are some very simple things. I think practicing sounds really weird, but we really like practicing on cadaver dogs. If you're going to be doing a surgery, practicing on cadaver dogs is exceptionally helpful and builds confidence and is a great way to formulate your skills when you are getting ready to do procedures that you haven't maybe done before or have learned but haven't done before. Do not tell clients that you just graduated. It's unnecessary. That does not need to be part of your introduction when you go into an exam room. Hi, I'm Dr. King. I just got here from Purdue last week. No. Don't say anything about when you graduated or how new you are, or when somebody says, "Oh my gosh, you guys are just getting younger every day." You say, "I know. It's amazing, isn't it? Now, how can I help you today? What's going on with Fluffy?" Okay? You don't have to say, "Oh yeah, I just graduated last week." It's unimportant. All right, let's see here. What is next? If you ran an urgent care at your hospital, what is one thing you would make sure you had? At Nina Marie 7988. I would make sure I had a really qualified registered veterinary technician. That'd be my tool. Absolutely. I would make sure I had one of those. I would do anything I had to do to have one of those. Absolutely. If you're talking about equipment, I would say I could get a lot more information from a lab equipment than I would from an ultrasound or an X-ray unit. If I had to forego something so I could have something else, I would have the lab equipment and not have X-ray or ultrasound. Because our hands can do so much and can tell us so much about the patient. Do you need confirmation, to appropriately diagnose? Absolutely. But with your knowledge base and with the lab machine, I think that you can know a lot and be headed in the right direction. So I would definitely not forego the lab machine. As a technician, how can I make our graduate DVM days easier? What can I do to help? At Abby Gupple. All right. Oh gosh. I mean, the fact that you're even asking that question, I guarantee you that you're making a difference. The fact that you're even wondering what you can do to make a graduate DVM's days easier, you're already doing it. But I would say some big things. Lead, even though, right, because we just talked about that, you're leading up. So you can remind them of the core values of the clinic that you're at. Hey, Dr. Smith, let's look at the schedule for tomorrow so that we know what we have on our calendar so that we're ready to hit the ground running when the day starts. That way, I also know if there's anything you want me to have prepared ahead of time for you. So that's starting to get them to think about the next day, what they should be thinking about. It gets them starting to talk to you about what their needs might be for the next day, especially if there's surgeries that are on the docket for the next day. Look at those surgeries. What are we thinking the anesthetic protocol is going to look like? Talking about all those things ahead of time starts to open up a dialogue between the veterinarian and the head technician or their technician. And so it allows them to start to feel like you're a team, right? You're in it together. You're in it to win it together. And so you'll find that opening up that channel of communication is going to relieve a lot of the pressure, because one of the things that new graduates feel is, I got to know everything and I got to know it now. And that's just not the case. There's plenty of time to think. And so I think showing them that by asking those prompting questions is really helpful. I think it sounds really dorky, but when they start their day, making sure that they know where their stethoscope, otoscope, and ophthalmoscope are. Those are things, I've done videos on these where I lose them around the clinic, right? Knowing, like having those things ready for them is one less thing they have to stress out about finding. It sounds really stupid, but it's something very simple. Offering to make phone calls. So having a meeting ahead of time with the new graduate and then saying, hey, these are things I'm really good at. I'm perfectly fine making all the phone calls on heartworm test results, fecals after you look at them. If we have a plan in place in terms of treatment plan, I'm happy to talk about those things with the owners. That frees you up to talk about medical cases. And so that's really extremely helpful. And really just kind of walking them through what that clinic's day looks like. Hey, we're going to try and get our drop-offs done before noon, because when we do that, it gives you more time to get the cases processed and call the owners. So like just kind of helping them see how the day is going to work gets them into the right flow without developing bad habits. And as a technician, you just have the confidence that you can lead up and have those conversations. I think that's huge. And then I would also say at the end of the day, having the conversation, how did you think the day went? Is there anything we want to do different tomorrow? Are there any cases that we want to check on first thing in the morning? Like just prompting, again, those kind of expectations that your other veterinarians might already be doing, I think is a huge help. So great job, Abby. I'm sure the veterinarian that you're working with is going to greatly appreciate having you. What are your thoughts on the new Bravecto Quantum at Morgan_Fouts 17? I think this is gonna be really interesting, right? It has the potential to really help a lot of patients with infestations, because I think that owner compliance is such an issue. So could I see cases where using it for flea infestations in households where you just can't get an owner to stay on flea control for more than 3 months? Those cases, those patients are going to benefit greatly from having flea control. And of course, those are always the patients that have the flea allergy dermatitis, right? Or the ones that we can't get the owners to be compliant about giving it all the time. And so I think for those patients, it's going to be huge. I think for those owners, what a relief. They don't have to think about it all the time. My reservation is tick control, so not treating all the species of ticks and then Lone Star ticks only being treated for 8 months. So that's kind of, so I have some reservations about that. But I think it's going to be a niche product. I think it's going to be a huge help for a lot of people who understand the value of year-round flea prevention, but just can't get themselves to do it or get their pets to take it even. Some pets are just not compliant about taking it. So, but as with any new drug, it's going to come under fire. And there's going to be all kinds of things about it because it's an isoxazoline. And so it's going to be under fire for all the neurologic things and everything like that. So be on the lookout. I'm sure everybody on social media is going to be giving it a hard time or, just talking about it. So we'll see what happens. But that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Can you walk me through how you go about ethical dilemmas in vet med at Taylor's_2003? 2003. Okay. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by this question, but if you mean like how I manage ethical dilemmas, like how I think about them, if I'm having an ethical dilemma, or is it like, how do we think about ethical dilemmas in veterinary medicine as an industry? I mean, I think the industry is always evolving. I think that the biggest key I try and tell myself is to be constantly evolving and learning, and there's probably always going to be new and better ways to do things. Having said that, sometimes there are things that need to be done in order to protect a person and a patient that nowadays might be deemed unethical. And I think that's the gray zone. And sometimes it's comfortable. You're comfortable living in the gray zone because of how you view the ethical dilemma. And sometimes you're not. And I think it's very important to find a practice where you have similar core values so that you're not fighting those dilemmas as much as more than you actually have to, because that can be a huge stressor and a big cause for depression and burnout. And so make sure you find a practice with the core values, because then you have people you can bounce those ideas off, and you can formulate action plans and processes and policies that everyone believes in so that you feel like you're addressing those ethical dilemmas. So, I mean, I think that's kind of how I would handle it, I suppose. I'm not a person who's going to get really drugged down into the dreads of overthinking things. I don't, I try and live in that place where I like to contemplate ideas and new policies and procedures, but I also don't like to lose sight of practicality. And so I'm kind of like in this one place. So, but not everybody's like that. Some people are like forge forward, and other people are like, hell no. So it just depends. But that's kind of how I think about it. How do you make a decision in specialty? I'm stuck between two fields and can't decide. At firm 20N20. Oh boy, that's really hard. I think that if you have two things that you're truly passionate about, then I would look at if there's one that you're particularly good at. Is there one of those two specialties that people would say you're going to be exceptional? Where would you like to focus all of your attention? If you could pick one big thing, where would you like all that attention to go to? Because that's the one that I would pick. I would base it off of those two things. I would ask other people, where do you think my gifts lie? Do you think it's in this, or do you think it's in this? And in actuality, maybe you're meant to be a GP because you're good at everything. And so wouldn't that be awesome? But if you're dead set on specialty, then I would ask mentors where they think they see you, where they think your skills can be best used. And then I would also make note of things like, do you ever want to be an owner of a clinic? If you're looking at radiology, probably not practical, but if you're looking at radiology and ophthalmology, as an ophthalmologist, you could own a clinic, right? So as a neurologist and an ophthalmologist would be more likely to own a clinic than a neurologist. And so that might play into why you pick one over the other. And so I think those do you like surgery? Does each specialty offer you the same capacity as far as surgery? How much do you like working with clients? Those are the questions that aren't just about the medicine, but the actual practicalities of the job that might sway you one direction or the other. Why did you sell your clinic to a corporation at Victoria Poppy? Great question. I love this question because I think that corporations are demonized. And I understand why, because I think we had corporations that in the beginning did a really, really crappy job of partnering with clinics. And so I think nowadays we have several corporations that are doing a better job of partnering with clinics and allowing clinics to maintain their uniqueness while at the same time elevating their gifts and their strengths and their skills and promoting that uniqueness. And so the main reason, I guess just to give you a little bit of background, I kind of believe that businesses have an arc, right? So a business has an arc, and you're going to, for our clinic, it started, and at about 18, 19 years, I could see the writing on the wall that if we wanted to get to the next place, we really probably needed deeper pockets. I could have easily continued to own the practice and then stagnated its growth, because that's what would have happened. And so because when you own a clinic, you don't have the same privileges as far as purchasing power and whatnot. And then also benefits were a big thing. And when you're running a practice, in order to run it to the upside and to maximize profitability, which should be expected of you, and your staff should expect that of you, you have to keep your percentages in a particular line, which then keeps you from being able to offer the same types of benefits and hourly wages that a corporation that can have lower COGS and whatnot can offer their employees. So we kind of saw the writing on the wall, right? We were getting to this place where we wanted our employees to be able to have 401ks, health insurance, higher hourly wages. And so we decided, hey, you know what? Let's do this, but let's do this in a particular way. And we kind of broke the mold from the standpoint of approaching the sell of the practice. We brought in leadership to discuss that concept. This is what we think needs to happen, guys. And we want it to be the best situation possible. And we want people to trust the decision making. And we want to be very transparent about it. So everybody knew that this was the writing that was on the wall for the previous a year and a half before this all went down. And then we told the staff as well. And then leadership helped us interview corporations, ultimately knowing that they understood that it was ultimately our decision at the end of the day, but their input was extremely valuable in making sure that we made the right decision. And so hearing everyone's opinions and addressing concerns ahead of time led to a very smooth transition. So I was very happy with all of that. And they've been able to do things that would have taken us much longer to get done. And the staff wages are fantastic. And so those were the main reasons why I did it. And I consider it was a very positive move. So there's that. Tell us, please, about your dogs and cats at AL_with_Tina. Of course. Okay, so I have a dog named Kaya. She is a Doberman Pinscher. She's fantastic. She's like 2.5 years old. She's an amazing dog, and she loves to do everything that Dobermans do. She's like quintessential Doberman. She patrols the area. She's extremely compliant. She will come back. She will warn us if there's anything on the property, but if I hear her off in the distance, I can whistle for her and she will come right back even though she's barking. So she is very aware of what's required of her. She's extremely loving. She's she's just hilarious. And then I have a very old domestic short hair orange cat, and he's amazing. I love orange cats. If you've watched anything, with our social media, you would see that I love orange male cats. They're fantastic. It's almost like having a dog and a cat. He's a wonderful companion and has a great personality and just loves everybody and has been able to tolerate so much over his lifespan in terms of animals coming in and out of the house, kids, everything. And then we have a 3-year-old domestic short hair tabby. Her name is Valentine, and she is absolutely hilarious. She loves my youngest son, Calvin, and Calvin is her person. She knows when Calvin is home. She knows when Calvin's supposed to go to bed. She will sit at the top of the stairs and meow for him until he responds to her. And when he was little, like 3 years younger when he got her, and so his voice obviously was a lot higher when he first acquired her. I think she's 4 now, maybe. And he would say, Valentine, Valentine. And so we all have to talk like that now because Valentine will come running if you say her name that way. And so he will be upstairs and Valentine will be in my room and he'll say, Valentine. Valentine comes running right to him. And then likewise, if he's in the basement and it's 9:30, it's time for bedtime and she knows he's supposed to be upstairs, she will start meowing, wondering where he's at. And all I have to do is open the basement door and go, hey, Calvin, Valentine's looking for you. And he will go, Valentine. She comes running down to go get him in the basement, and is one of my favorite things ever, because just seeing that relationship between a pet and a person, it's so cool. So those are my animals right now. I used to have more, and they were geriatric, and so unfortunately they passed away. But I've told myself I am only keeping that one dog because all of my children now have dogs, and then they bring their dogs to my house. So I don't have to have any more than just Kai, the Doberman, and the cats. Okay, do you have any tips on relaxing and genuinely taking a break? At Bailey G_10. When you are supposed to be resting, you have to rest. Because, as I talked about earlier in the podcast, when you're working, you have to be willing to swing to the extremes. So in order to be able to do that, when you have marked yourself time for rest, then you absolutely have to find time for rest. And that's what I call margin time. And I think if you pay attention to what you're thinking and doing and feeling, you'll figure out what is your margin time. For me, it's driving in the car to Tennessee. That is a huge place that I have margin time. That is where a lot of my unique thoughts, creative ideas come from, when I'm just allowed to, my brain can dump what it's currently working on, and then it just starts to think about lots of other fun, cool things. And so if you allow yourself to have margin time, you'll see your brain doing that. And that's really important if you're trying to grow something, even if that's just yourself. So margin time is exceptionally, exceptionally important. And so if you have blocked yourself time to rest, then you should rest. And you should not feel bad that you're not doing the work thing when you're in the rest mode. And so I think those are keys to actually feeling rested when you come back from rest. So, and I would find things that you just genuinely enjoy doing. And typically those things are going to be things that when you're doing them, you don't even think about work. And so for me, that's manual labor. I love doing manual labor. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I see something undone and then I see it done. So like I'll move gravel like from one thing to another because I like seeing that the gravel pile goes down and I'm making something else look better over here. Or I don't know, pulling weeds because you get this visual effect when you're finished. I like cleaning, like anything like that. Manual labor is very rewarding to me. And although and I think maybe because it also physically makes me tired physically, but I, again, can brain dump and then just enjoy what I'm doing. So, some people it's reading, some people it's playing music, some people it's exercising, which I also do, which is I use for a different purpose. But I think, think about the activities that you're doing and what they're giving you, and that will help you figure out how often you need to do them and why you're doing them. So, do you think the schooling cost is worth it to work in veterinary medicine? At LOWEO_11. Oh. I really don't think it's worth it to work in veterinary medicine for what it costs you if you have to incur the large substantial amounts, meaning greater than $300,000 in student debt. And I know that's an unpopular mode of thinking. I just think that the pressure that comes from the financial pressure associated with that type of debt load is not worth your mental happiness. And, because so many people think this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. If I'm doing something that I really love, it quickly will become something you don't love when you can't pay your bills, or when it keeps you from doing something else in 20 years that you really want to do because you're still paying a student loan, or that you can now not do because you have kids and you're now not working to pay back the student loan, and maybe you're only working 30% of the time, or 40 or 50 or 75% of the time. And so I tell people cautiously, be careful with how much debt you're taking on, because although it seems like it's not a big deal right now, your life is going to change, and you want to be flexible. You want to be nimble. You want to be able to make choices that maybe you didn't think you would make previously. And so And veterinary medicine is great, but there's facets of veterinary medicine that can be achieved in other professions, meaning that it's, yes, about working with animals, but what are the trades of the job that are of interest to you? If it's something that, and the debt is something you can't incur, what other professions can you still get those traits of the job with? And I think that's really important to understand as well. And of course, if you don't have to incur the student debt at that level and you've got a plan and you're going to be disciplined, then absolutely. I think that the friendships that I've made in veterinary medicine, the opportunities that veterinary medicine has given me, the, all of it, the learning curve. I mean, learning the ability to be uncomfortable, all of that is thanks to veterinary medicine, and it's all been worth it. But I didn't pay nearly what students pay now to go to school, and I don't know if I would have if that was the case. I certainly wouldn't be in the position that I'm in now if I had that much school debt. So it is something that needs to be contemplated and talked about, and I don't think there's enough frank conversations about what potentially that could look like. Can you handle the worst case scenario, which would be your student debt piling up on itself because you don't use your education from the standpoint of paying back the student loan? Can you live with that? Can you live with what that debt looks like in 10 years, in 20 years? And so if you can, go for it. If you're like, oh, maybe I can't, then that's okay. That's not something that you need to feel bad about or beat yourself up about because you feel that way. So anyway, I just think frank conversations need to be had. And it more than just, if you love it, then do it because it'll be worth it. I think that's negligent thinking. I think that that's pie in the sky. I don't think that serves anybody well. So how do you feel about the mentality older vets have towards new grads at LYLY Trixing? Okay. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, unless you're meaning way older people than me, and that's how they feel about new grads, because let's be honest, I'm not old, right? So, okay, I don't know. Harrison, do you have feedback on the mentality older vets have towards new grads?
No, not necessarily. I have seen some videos from some other veterinarians like Dr. Crocker who were sort of painting the older veterinarians in a negative light, and by saying things like they didn't have they didn't have a work-life balance, or
okay.
they were the ones that were like, I don't know. I don't want to say anything because I don't fully remember.
So you think that maybe older vets being like, you're not willing to live in the grind.
Yes.
So
yeah, basically older vets.
You're not willing to. I think that older veterinarians probably have the opinions they do because what they did led to good results, and they see it as a positive, and they don't want the new students missing out. Now, I'm not saying they're talking about it the right way, but maybe that's where they're coming from. Like, maybe if someone's like, you want all of these things, but you're not willing to do all of these things. And so maybe that's where some of it's coming from. I think that if you're working with someone who's approaching your relationship that way, then you should have a conversation with them. Like, do you think there's something I'm missing? Do you think there's something I should be doing instead? Because the backhanded comments aren't helpful to growing me. So if you think that I'm whatever, fill in the blank, then show me how to be different. Just telling me to miss lunch isn't helping me. And so I think that kind of working relationship and growing that, again, like we talked about before, leading up the chain of command, growing that enduring relationship by allowing that older veterinarian to know the effect of that mentality towards them. Now, it may be that they're like, hey, listen, I'm just sharing this information with you because this is what I did and it led to great results. whether you do it or not, I don't really care. I just want you to know the information. Well, that's a whole different, ball game, right? I mean, now you can be like, okay, yeah, I get why you're saying that. I don't really care about any of those things. I want to do it this way, and I don't care that, my earning potential is this, or I don't care that clients don't come back to see me, or I don't care that, whatever, fill in the blank, things that maybe the other veterinarian cares about, but maybe the new veterinarian has decided doesn't carry as much weight. And that all depends upon the goals of the individual. Everybody's going to have different goals. For someone, it might be building relationships and having, like I just mentioned, having a client come back and see them, and knowing everything about that client and the family, and, now seeing the other family members of the client, and like growing that family tree within your clinic. Like, that was really powerful for us. But what did that mean? That means that then we had to give up lunch sometimes, right? Because somebody needed something urgent, or, and I don't think that new grads are saying they aren't willing to do those things. I think that maybe they don't understand the why all the time. I think that they also see it as all or none, and I don't think that's the case. So I guess at the end of the day, it really just comes down to being willing to have those conversations. And I think that there's a bad taste in the older veterinarians' mouths with younger veterinarians thinking that they should have all of this but not have had to do any of this. Maybe? I don't know. I'm just guessing. All right. How do you ask a veterinarian if you can shadow them? Any tips and or suggestions at Creature YASEI? Okay. You just go ask them. Most veterinarians are pretty comfortable having people shadow them. I would dress professionally, and I would go into the office, and I would ask if you could speak with the practice manager. So that's one way to do it. And you could say, I would love to set up a shadow with one of your veterinarians for 2 hours. I think long shadow days are hard on the veterinarian. So, maybe it's 2 short days. Those are nice to do. 2 hours, 2 days, maybe, on a week. Or you can email the practice manager. Or if you have a veterinarian that's taking care of your pet, then you can email that veterinarian directly and say, hey, my name is so-and-so. You take care of my dog so-and-so. I would love the opportunity to shadow 2 hours, 2 different times, just to see what clinic life is about, what being a veterinarian is about. I'm contemplating going into veterinary school, those kinds of things. And I think people will be more than happy to accommodate you. Did production animal medicine ever interest you? At Emma Malloy. Oh my gosh, yes. I loved cows, and I just wasn't confident enough to potentially do cows. And I just thought, because if you remember my story where I didn't even know what a ruminant was when I was sitting in anatomy lab in vet school first year, I thought it was too big of a leap. But I did. I thought that was production animal medicine is very interesting. And so I do think it would be very cool. What is one case from your clinic that always stuck with you? At Aaron Borchert. Oh my God, there's so many, but I will tell you the first one that really stuck with me was a dog from a great client that got hit by a car at 6 p.m. And this was when the clinic had just opened, and it was in bad shape. It had ruptured its diaphragm, and I was like, it needs to go to ER. And the owner's like, we can't afford it. We can't. But I want to try something. And so the owner understood our limitations, understood that we were not urgent care or emergency ER board certified veterinarians, but that we would do the best we could to put the dog back together. And staff stayed late that night. We stayed all night. And we put that dog back together, and the owner was so thankful. And it was such a positive experience, because it would have been so easy to be like, well, then we should euthanize the pet. And we didn't. And the staff got to learn that whole lesson of be comfortable being uncomfortable, and just being willing to offer hope, to an owner, and kind of just meeting them where they were, and them understanding that we weren't board certified ER veterinarians, but we were going to do everything that we could to try and save their dog. And there were some, special circumstances why they did not want to let this pet go. And so everybody just did everything they could. And it was just a really cool experience. The other case that stuck with me was when I first got out of vet school. I was working at Crider Veterinary Clinic in South Bend, Indiana, and I was taking care of a dog that was a service dog for a young woman in a wheelchair. And her dog ended up having cancer and ended up having pulmonary mets and ended up having to be euthanized. And that was the first time that I really, truly understood the human-animal bond. I mean, this person was devastated about the loss of their dog and the feeling of not being able to alleviate the pain for the owner, but also, fix the problem for the dog so that the owner could maintain the relationship with the dog was a heavy burden. And I just remember going, oh my gosh, wow, this is really what it's all about. Keeping pets with their people as long as possible. That is the entire objective every single day. And there's going to be times where you don't get to do it as long as you want to. And that person now she doesn't have that animal with her, which was like a true service animal. And so that was really eye-opening and very rewarding. As hard as it was really cool. It was really, really cool. So, anyway, those were the two cases that stuck with me. What are your thoughts on clinics that are low on staff but won't accept undergrads for the summer? At Taylor_GRASZ. All right, Taylor, I'm going to try to not pass judgment, but I would say that if they won't accept undergrads for the summer, my guess is that there's a lot of training that goes in to hiring someone and them only being there for 8 weeks. And so it's hard. It is hard to bring somebody in and then you spend all this time on them and then they step out the door in 8 weeks. The way we conquered this problem is we hire high school students. And so our high school students then evolve. So we train them when they're in high school and then they are now trained when they go to college and they come back from college. There's no training involved. They can step in the clinic for 8 weeks. They can step in the clinic for 2 weeks during Christmas break or spring break, and they can come back and forth and help without us having to have put in all the training and then losing them. And so that may be part of the reason why you don't see undergrads in clinics. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep attempting to try, because the same thing could apply to you as an undergraduate student. If you could get in a clinic now where you live and you come back to for the summers and for Christmas, that's what I would talk to the clinic about. I would say, I'm interested in being hired here because then I would love to, on winter break, come back and work, or on spring break, come back and work, so that you have an extra set of hands. I'm willing to do whatever it is that you need to do, which is typically the grunt work, because it's hard to find somebody who is willing to have attention to detail with laundry and cleaning and restocking. And when you find those people that are willing to spend the time and have attention to detail on those skills and understand the importance and the value that those things have, they are worth their weight in gold, and they will have you back over and over and over again. So I would encourage you to maybe talk about it from that standpoint. That might help. All right, guys. Wow. That was a mouthful. Amazing questions. Hopefully, maybe there's some insight in there somewhere. I just want to thank everybody for sending in all the questions. That was really cool. Really enjoyed it. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Veterinary Roundtable. Remember, send in those questions and leave us a review if you enjoyed this episode or a previous one. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Veterinary Roundtable. Bye-bye.